my fault.
We are live.
Okay, we are live, folks. This is the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission, and we're so glad to be together as a board once again here in March. So we'll call the meeting to order, and I note that we have 3 board members, Winston, Annette, and Dennis, in the Hemlock Knoll boardroom. We have 3 board members and the executive director here at the planning office in downtown St. Stephen, and the rest of the members are joining by Zoom. So it's just so good to have you all here. And we definitely have a quorum with the number of members that we have here. So we'll proceed with the meeting. At this point in time, I would ask any board members to self-declare if they have a conflict of interest with anything on tonight's agenda. You are required to self-declare. Any to note? None to note? All right, we'll move on. Adoption of the agenda of the meeting. It was circulated to the board members in your board package. So we would be looking at this point in time for a motion to adopt as circulated. Do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Terry has moved. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Carla to my left. Do we have, and for those of you on screens, if you want to move, shout or holler, or flap your hands so I can see you. I do try to scan the screen, but I'm certainly not intentionally anybody. So we have a motion to accept. We have a seconder. Are there any questions or discussion about the agenda as circulated, the draft agenda? None to note. Okay, we'll be ready for the question. All in favor of, if you're on the screens, please just raise your hand, and then we'll go to the phones and the rooms. So let Claudette count them. Alan and Kathy. Kathy, you're sitting in for Jim tonight. He's unable to be here, so you're at the board table tonight, Kathy. Thank you. All right, so then we'll go to the boardroom. Did we have 3 hands up there? I can't see.
Yep, they're up.
All 3 hands up. Thank you. And here in the planning office, if you're in favor, stick your hand up, and all 3 in the planning office as well. So we have our agenda adopted. Thank you so much. Then we'll be moving on to the adoption of the minutes of the February 25th, 2021 board meeting. And once again, they were circulated to you in your board package. They were reviewed by the executive committee as well prior to circulation to the board members. So at this point in time, once again, we would be looking for a motion to adopt as circulated. Annette, I see your hand up there. Annette has made a motion. Annette made the motion to adopt as circulated. Do we have a seconder? Oh, Heather had, I saw your hand go up first. Okay, so we have any question or discussion or anything to know about those minutes that were circulated? Anything at all? No? Okay, so we'll be looking for a motion to adopt the minutes of the February 25th, 2021 board meeting as circulated in the board package. If you're on the screens, just raise your hand. And if you're in the rooms, I guess you can raise your hand too. And we'll just ask for a count of the rooms. Good. Do we have 3 hands up in the boardroom?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we have 3 hands up at the planning office. So we have our minutes adopted. Thank you, board members. We'll move on to business arising from the previous meetings. As you will recall, at last month's board meeting, our planning director, Alex Henderson, was here, and he brought us up to speed on a change that was made to the province as far as the building code that's been adopted, and how it was kind of brought in unawares to them without any consultation, and what that meant for the planning department of the service commission. And so there was a suggestion that the board might want to look at drafting a letter, and that is included in your board package as well. So if anybody has any questions about that, you can certainly ask at this time, but it is in your board package. It does. Where did it go?
It was sent as a separate.
It was a separate attachment. Okay, so that is a draft that we'll be looking at to send out. So take a peek at it. It's not in your board package that I have printed in front of me. And within the next few days, just fire off an email and let the executive director know, executive committee, if you're in support of the wording of it, and we'll finalize that. Are there any questions about last month's discussion and this business arising questions or discussion that you want to bring forward tonight? No, none to note. Okay, we'll move on. We don't have any new business to adopt, what with the AGM coming up and the municipal and LSD elections. We're not bringing a lot of new business to the table. So we'll move on to committee and staff reports. We'll start with our executive director's report. Hollis Bartlett is here with us in the planning office tonight, and we'll turn it over to him for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the chair has noted, it's in your report. I'm just going to go over a few points there. Solid waste, we are business as normal. Everything appears to be on track. There's nothing out of the ordinary to report there in terms of solid waste volumes, or recycling has been keeping up to where we have been. At the planning department, despite record high building materials costs, our building permits are year over year again higher. One thing to note here is the building permits versus development permits. There really is no more development permits with the new changes in legislation. Everything is a building permit. So you're going to see the stats are going to change a little bit to be a lot more building permits, because that's what the only thing we're doing in the moment. And going back to the letter that I have drafted, that was in your package, and then that whole process, we're still questioning the Department of Public Safety, who is now overseeing the Building Code Act. The Greater Miramichi Regional Service Commission, the executive director there, has been a planner for a long time, and he's kind of taken the lead on us as a group, asking questions and kind of pressuring that department to get some clarity around some things, and hopefully some changes so it'll be a little bit more workable sooner rather than later. But it wouldn't hurt for every regional service commission to support that with a letter to the minister as well. So other news, I attended a meeting with Minister Alain, local government and local governance reform, along with various LSD chairs. A lot of you were in on that. And there's some other folks that weren't here. He was just looking for input on governance reform. On the same topic, Martin Corbett, he's a senior advisor. His position is now senior advisor, correct, for environment and local government. He met with me separately because he was trying to get a read on the region and what our dynamics were here, what challenges we face, what's working well, what isn't working well, that kind of thing. So it sounds like he's doing that with every region. So it sounds like there's various people in the department looking for lots of input for reform. So that's a hopeful thing. The New Conversations 2.0 meeting happened on March 11th. Guest speaker was David Campbell and some others. I think Brianna Ganong was one of the guest speakers as well.
Can I just get you to clarify what New Conversations is? It's not an initiative of the RC.
No, it was put on by Multicultural Council.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And the purpose of it is to address population decline or population challenges that we have in New Brunswick. I did raise one issue during the meeting, and I said that given the record number of building permits that we're issuing, given the shortages of building supplies, and given the shortage of inventory in the housing market itself, whether to buy or rent, are these stats up to date? Since that time, and actually since I wrote this, it was just like a couple of days ago, there was another article came up in the Telegraph Journal from David Campbell, and he seems to has shifted the focus around housing and the housing shortage, and the fact that the demographic is changing in New Brunswick. What that demographic looks like is unclear yet, but it sounds like there's some work happening there to determine what it looks like this population growth in New Brunswick is that we're seeing. So that's good too. LSD Advisory Committee elections are going to be happening in April, all of them. And so I'm going to assist Mr. McCabe here with hopefully getting that done, because this is a first. This has never happened. They were always spread out over 4 years, and for them to happen all at once is just I know you guys are pulling your hair out there trying to get this all done, so.
What's left of it?
So anyway, we're gonna do our best to make sure that happens well enough and in time to be able to have our RAC election before our new board meets in June. So lots of stuff happening over the next couple of months. And lastly, the executive committee started planning for AGM in April. So the intent is to have, I've contacted Garcelon Center and we can do this in person. We have put together an operational plan to be compliant with COVID-19 rules and spoken to them, and we are potentially going to be looking at April 22nd. You can speak to that more if you'd like to, Madam Chair.
Sure. Well, April 22nd is the fourth Thursday. And at executive committee, when we were discussing it, we always like to have a guest speaker for our AGM. And we said, okay, fourth Thursday is April 22nd. If the guest speaker can come that week, we'll have it as usual. But if the guest speaker wasn't able to come on the 22nd of April, we would suggest the 29th, because it's the fifth Thursday, which only happens once a quarter, that a month would have 5 Thursdays. So we'd hope nobody had anything that was regularly scheduled for the fifth Thursday. So 29th was our backup date, depending on guest speaker, but it looks like our guest speaker is going to be able to attend this 22nd, so we won't need a motion to change that date. So you can continue, Hollis. Thank you. Oh, and yes, we did discuss having the in-person option for those who want it, but of course there will also still be the electronic means and telephone in means for those who either need that or prefer that option as well. So we're going to similar to what we're doing tonight.
Yep.
So we're excited for that.
That's my report, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So does anyone have any questions or comments for Hollis on his executive director's report? No, none to know. Scanning the screens. No. All right, we'll move on. Sorry. I missed somebody. Where? Wayne?
Yeah, I ain't figured this computer out yet.
No problem.
That meeting you had with Elaine, is there any notes or anything that you can pass on, or was it just a general meeting?
It was just a general meeting. First half of it was he was just discussing his process for local governance reform and how it was going to happen, that the green paper was supposed to be out either by the end of this month or maybe into April. And then the white paper should be out in September-ish. After they get the green paper, that the working groups are going to flesh that out over the summer. It sounds like a lot of work's going to happen over the summer. And to come up with the white paper in the fall. But other than that, wasn't really much in terms of content.
Okay, thank you.
Hollis, he did mention that the working groups are going to be looking for LSD chairs to to be part of the working groups. So keep that in mind. You might get asked.
Okay, good to know, Wade. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? And certainly speak up if I missed you and you had your hand up and I didn't see it. All right, none to know. So with that done, we'll move on to the strategic plan update. And once again, Hollis Bartlett, our executive director, will be presenting the strategic plan update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, that's in your package. In bold is things that I have changed or updated. About every quarter, I do a complete update, and that's what you see at the very first of this, in where we are in planning in the various plans and what stage they're at, plus the additional regional planning activities. So we had some things kind of parked to see where we're going to go with some things, and that would be economic strategy, transportation, things like that. Those are just sitting there as they were part of previous mandates. They're also mentioned in the original plan, so we have them there just so we don't forget about them. Otherwise, our recreation website has been launched. The regional recreation website has been launched. It's getting used quite well. We keep track of all the statistics on that, and we have a lot of, dozens of new visitors every day. Good. That are using that, so that's great. I had a note in there about we're voicing concerns with the public safety regulation for building inspection. It does impact us pretty significantly. We have our webpage launched and promoted. It includes all the information, and it also has the opportunity for input from the public on the recreation master plan policy, new adoption. That'd be the cost sharing. So that has seen some activity and some responses. Just some efficiency stuff that we're doing at Hemlock Knoll. Actually, we put in some heat retention curtains that made a huge difference. We are going ahead with a geothermal heating system for the administration building because we have one failed and one about to fail air-to-air heat exchanger there now, or heat pump there now. And we were able to get a pretty significant rebate from NB Power on that, which made it actually less money to install this as to fix the current air-to-air heat pump. So that's great. So there is a governance workshop that is being attended by some of our directors. And that's about it for this month, Madam Chair.
All right, are there any questions from any of the board members about that strategic plan update? I did see something on there, Hollis. I see on the front page, the planning staff recommending innovative planning tools to greatly increase the development / supply of new workforce housing stock. The development scheme bylaws, that's something that's kind of in the, is it for the development scheme bylaws for the rural areas that are getting the rural plans done, or is that just kind of a inception stage of something that may be brought back later?
Yeah,
just curious.
Yeah, that's kind of a placeholder because we're going to report on that more later on. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna have somebody that knows it better than me actually do the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So something to look forward to.
Yes.
Okay. And underneath the regional economic strategy, it says significant opportunity awaits board direction. And is that something that's as well going to be brought to the board as a full presentation as well?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It sounds like some interesting things going to be coming our way in the next month or two. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that because they both sound very interesting. Thank you, Hollis. Are there any questions besides mine? None? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Hollis, for that report. We'll move on to the Regional Collaborative Committee report, and Mayor of Black's Harbor, Terry James, she is the chair of that committee. So I'm going to turn that over to Terry for her report.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to start off with a correction to the minutes and have two names removed under regrets. One would be Joyce Wright, the other Faith Avery. These members are no longer members of this committee. With that being said, I'll summarize what transpired, and if you have any questions, I would ask you direct them to Hollis because I wasn't in attendance. So with regard to the Coastal Link, Sherry Stewart gave a report that St. George former NB Rail trail design will be complete March 19th and ready for tender in April. Construction will take place in May or June. In the Spruce Lake segment, there was a permit received to use the land. There are communications taking place with the Lorneville ATV group regarding a cost share agreement for the maintenance. That design is to be completed in April and ready for tender in June, with construction to take place in July. DTI is in the final round of review and new funding has been applied for. Sherry also reported on the recreation policy awareness campaign. The public awareness plan timeline was presented, and there was a brief overview of the website visitors. She also spoke about the website and the survey insights, and she gave a brief walkthrough of the new Recreation Hub website and the responses. And finally, with regard to policy participation, There was a discussion on the participation of Campobello and all communities, LSDs. And the consensus was to wait until after the green paper comes out and decide in April. So I'd like to bring forward a motion that a notice of motion was given at the last meeting to be extended until April board meeting for approval of the draft regional recreation master plan policy. We're gonna postpone it for a month.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to delay the vote on the draft policy.
Right.
Because the notice was given last month. We have a motion to delay based on the fact that a green paper is coming out. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Ken, I see Ken's hand up. Any questions about what that motion means? Questions or discussion? And to note, we'll move on to the question. So all in favor of the motion to delay that vote can raise your hand, and we'll take count on screens and in the rooms. I don't think we have anybody just on phones. Okay. Okay, all on screens. I think Claudette has you. Now we'll move to the boardroom out to Hemlock Knoll. All in favor can raise your hands.
All three.
All three.
Perfect. And then all at the planning office can raise your hands if you're in favor. Perfect. We have 3 up here. So just in case I missed anybody, I will call for the nays. Anybody contrary minded, please raise your hand or give a shout out if I missed your hand. Do I see any hands up?
I have a question, Joyce.
Heather? Yeah.
Yes, if this green paper is late coming out, will this request be delayed again?
I'm not sure what the committee would recommend in that event, but the expectation is that it will be out before the April board meeting, and that's why they've asked for the delay to April. But if it's delayed again, I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it and see what the committee recommends to the board at that time.
If I may,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I believe, if I recall the conversation from this meeting, what the conversation was, we'll vote for it.
Regardless.
With or without the green
Okay,
paper. 'Cause
perfect. Thank you. So we had called for the nays and I didn't see any. We had a little bit of discussion. So with all the yays, the vote to delay has been carried. Thank you. Terry, is there anything else from you?
No, that concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Terry about that report? And she did say we would direct them to Hollis. Are there any questions for Hollis based on the contents of that report presented by Terry? No, none except me again? Jeepers. Okay, so on the coastal link section, Hollis, if you don't mind, it says in the Spruce Lake segment, there was a permit received to use the land. And this is a coastal trails initiative. We partner with coastal trails as the service commission, but this is part of the coastal trails project, correct?
Yep.
Yep, and so when it says, there was discussions, communications taking place with the Warrenville ATV group regarding a cost share agreement. Is that a cost share between Coastal Link and the ATV trail group?
That's correct. yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. My understanding with Coastal Link is that there's a sort of a renewed energy with the
Mhm.
group, and
Good.
they are actively pursuing, making sure this project gets completed.
Right. No, I just wanted to confirm that it's a cost share agreement, not necessarily that the SNBSC is part of. but
Yeah, it really doesn't have anything to do with us. I think that's really just shared reporting on her.
Because we were a key figure in helping that organization get
Still
off
are.
the ground and still are, but the cost share agreement is between those two parties and not,
Yeah, no,
just
that's-
clarifying that.
Yep.
Perfect. No, just so the record had it. All right, that's great. I love the trails. I love to see the new ones being built. My family enjoys them, and it's great that they're people with maybe mobility issues can use them without the gravel under their feet, catching them up. I think they're wonderful. I love them. So that's just my own little plug for them. All right, no other questions for the RCO report. One last call. Nothing to note. Okay, we'll move on to the bylaw committee report. And Jim Tubbs is the chair of that committee. And he had to last minute extend his regrets. In the past 3 years, he's not had to miss a single meeting, and it was unexpected, but he's unable to be here. The other members of that bylaw committee are Annette, and myself. And I know Annette would not want to take Jim's place in presenting the draft bylaw revision. So I'm going to do my best to step into Jim's very capable shoes and see if I can't help walk you through it. And of course, Hollis was the staff member assigned to that committee working with us. So between the two of us, I'm sure we can work it through. So I believe Hollis is going to bring that up on the screen.
Electronic copies sent to us.
So,
Yep.
and there was an electronic copy sent out.
Okay.
So the, for the electronic copy, the table of contents has been hyperlinked. So when you're in the electronic copy, when you click on an item, it's going to take you right to that section. Going to be very, very user friendly.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, we'll work out the glitches. So what you see in blue there indicates the hyperlinks. What you're going to see in red on the next page is what we're suggesting be changed, deleted. And the reason that whole section is showing as red is because we have suggested in this revision, reorganizing it, not changing the content necessarily, but reorganizing it so they flow better. And you'll see why when we get to that point. So when you see in red, it's saying we're taking that out and we're replacing it with something else. And basically it's just a restructuring of that that order in the table of contents is why you see that in red. So we'll go on to the next page and back into blue. This is what we're going to say we would want that table of contents section to look like. So if we could just go back up, Hollis, to the little bit of that page. Can we go back right to the red page? Perfect. So this is what it looks like right now. What's in red? The committees, there's standing committees, composition, term, quorum, and then there's finance and audit committee, planning management committee, human resources committee, technical advisory committee, regional collaboration, and then special purpose committee. So we'll go to the blue page and say what we looked at for organization and suggested as a restructuring. So we, under committees, we have 3.1 and 3.2. 3.1 is regular standing committees, and then we define them underneath there. So there's the executive committee, the finance and audit committee, and the human resources committees. Those are three committees that are standing committees of the board that aren't assigned to any particular division of the SNBSC. They're general standing committees that oversee the entire scope of the SNBSC for those within the parameters of those committees. And then division standing committees. So there are standing committees that exist, but that are quote unquote assigned or tied to or oversee or ensure oversight is a better word because committees don't oversee, but they ensure oversight of the planning division. So the planning management committee would be tied to the planning division, and the technical advisory committee is tied to the solid waste division, and the RCO committee is tied to the local planning section. So just not changing really not really changing what those committees do, but just how we set them up in the table of contents, and making sure in the current bylaws, sometimes they'll say duties, and sometimes they had a different word, and sometimes they'll say composition, and sometimes they'll say membership. So we're just tidying up so that composition and membership meant the same thing. So we're giving all the committees the same word when we're talking about the members that make up those committees. So we just tidied up the naming of the table of contents so that they're all duties, composition, reporting responsibility, and meetings. So they're just clear, consistent format. So as new board members come on, or as new staff comes on, in the future, it's just very, very easy to see how they are different and the same from one another. So then section 3.3 was the ad hoc committees. And the only special purpose committee is the planning review and adjustment committee, which is really separate from the board, but tied in with the board as you are aware. And so that's going to be clearly defined as well. So that was the first major overhaul, was just suggested overhaul, I should say, was just how it's formatted in the table of contents, not table of comments, listen to me. Conflict of interest, then we move on. Nothing was changed from other than the committees as far as the formatting of the table of contents. And then we'll move on, financial Some of the titles were just changed, so conflict of interest is pretty, that wasn't changed, but you'll see through the table of contents, when you're looking at them, maybe the wording of the title has been changed, but the content really hasn't been. So do pay close attention to that when you're looking through it too, if you're wondering why there's a change. If you see a change in the title, it doesn't mean the content has been changed, just clarifying for ease of searching. Disclosure and withdrawal from meeting, all of that in section 4, of course, related to conflict of interest. Number 5 is meetings, talking about meetings of the board, of course. And place of meetings, regular meetings, waiver of notice. In other words, when notice can be waived, or of course, just as it says, participation in meetings by electronic means. We did have to make some major changes there, but it's because we're already doing what the changes are going to reflect. Well, we had to do it of necessity. Then special meetings, how special meetings can be called. Again, we tidied up the language in it because some of it was a little bit wordy and some of it was, you ready and went, what does that mean? So we tried to take the view that if I were new to the board and I had no board experience prior and I had no idea what the silos were and all of this stuff, how can we make this language as simple as possible so someone new coming on can know if I need a special meeting, this is how it works. And so we tidied up the language in it, but not changed again the content as far as how it gets done. So a special meeting can be called by the executive committee. It can be requested by a member of the board, can be called by a board majority, and there is participation by electronic means, of course, allowed in special meetings. So you'll see some changes there in the wording. If you compare the table of contents, doesn't necessarily mean the content's been changed. Okay. Cancellation of meetings and change of format. We did have to tidy that up because now with all the electronic means available, we don't necessarily have to cancel a meeting. It would be very rare, not like before when it was canceled because school was canceled. So that's one we're going to pay attention to. So then the rest of the table of contents is pretty much all the same, maybe just made some clear language in the titles. No major changes in those sections. Much of this is set out by regulation, so not a lot to change anyway. All right, and the appendixes, we did have to take a little bit of look at the appendixes. So let's move into the content of it now that we've looked at the table of contents. Anything in yellow, we're suggesting be struck out, and anything in green, we're suggesting we be added. So this first change is the mission statement. And this mission statement change is to reflect the mission statement that was adopted when we voted to accept our strategic plan. So the strategic plan defined our mission statement, therefore we felt the bylaws should reflect that change in the mission statement. So that's why that's suggested as a change.
And just keep
Yeah,
scrolling
just
until
keep
we get to
scrolling till we see anything that, okay. And so you'll see some things which are just tidying up of grammar or maybe making it a little simpler language. So the secretary is not the secretary of the board, Claudette is our secretary to the board. So you'll see some changes like that where we've just tidied up the language. The minister, and we changed this because the conservative government changed the Minister of Environment and Local Government, and they split that department into two separate, there's two ministers under that branch now. So to try to make it so that no matter what the government of the day does and what title it gives, our bylaws don't have to be changed every time. We are suggesting that instead of minister meaning the Minister of Environment and Local Government includes any person designated by the minister to act on the minister's behalf, that we just put our bylaws to say means the particular minister of provincial government responsible for the acts and regulations applicable to any division of the SNBSC.
So a good example of this is that now includes the Minister of Public Safety.
Right, because now they're the minister that oversees the laws relating to what building code they use and all of that. So we thought that might just make it a little more simpler. If you have any questions when we get to anything that I discussed, certainly I can't see your hands go up because I can't see all the faces on the screen now, but speak up and we'll stop if you have a question. Standing committee. We had to strike out community police advisory because it doesn't exist. But we defined standing committees and noted that the planning management committee and the technical advisor committee do include individuals who are not members of the board of directors. All right, so that's just. Okay. All alternates who serve on board committees shall be eligible for the same per diems and expense reimbursement which regular board members receive when serving on committees. We just had to add that in because when the original bylaws were written, there were no per diems for committees, and we had already adopted that as as something we do back when we added per diems for committee meetings, and that's been what, 3 or 4 years ago, I think. But our bylaws hadn't been updated to reflect that. So that's just to bring it up to match what we're already doing. Promotion. All right. This is one. The executive officer's term will begin either immediately after the adjournment of the AGM or immediately after the vote at the regular board meeting at which they are elected. Their term will end at the close of the next AGM where elections are held, or immediately after the vote held at a regular board meeting. This next one was a suggested strikeout based on motion 19-44. The chairperson, vice chairperson, and executive officer at large may be elected to the same role for no more than 4 consecutive one-year terms. And again, that was based on motion. So if there's any, again, as I say, if there's any questions, just ask. Oh, and then anything where you see just a tiny little blip is probably we just correcting a word that was missing in that one incident to his or her office, because that word was missing. The board of directors shall elect a parliamentarian from among its members immediately after the election. It's said at the beginning of each calendar year, and I think we've missed that every single year. So for the sake of continuity and for the sake of the fact that you could elect a parliamentarian in January, who then, because of a municipal election, may not be on the board after April, we thought it might make sense to propose a change to saying instead of electing the parliamentarian at the beginning of each calendar year, we elect the parliamentarian immediately after we elect the officers of the board. That way, anybody who wants to serve and maybe didn't want to stand for executive committee, the officers of the board, but they wouldn't mind doing the parliamentarian role, they know that they have that for that next 12 months before there's any changes again at another AGM. Just makes a little bit of continuity, and I think ease of not having to do it twice, potentially twice in a year. The parliamentarian, again, that was a long run-on sentence, so we just put a period there, suggesting putting a period there, taking out the word and then putting in the word the parliamentarian, just for ease of reading. And we also added a sentence, or suggesting adding a sentence, that when the parliamentarian, and thankfully it doesn't happen often, but when the parliamentarian does need to speak up in a board meeting, that the board member identifies that in that moment they're acting as the parliamentarian, just so that they're not just and I don't say this with any disrespect, they're not just a board member speaking up on, we all have equal footing, but when they interject as the parliamentarian, they're not on equal footing. That parliamentarian's ruling is the final authority. So they want to distinguish when they're interjecting as parliamentarian for the sake of clarity of all who might be involved at the table. And like I say, thankfully, we don't need that, but in the past, we certainly have in years gone by. And we just want to make it easy for it to be understood when they're acting in that capacity. All right, here's one of there. It's just talking about disciplinary action. Again, this is just tidying up the language. We're not asking for anything to be added or changed. We're just tidying up the language to make it easy to understand. So instead of one of the remaining officers present, it's just going to be that if disciplinary action had to be taken to remove an officer of the board, so one of your executive committee, then instead of the remaining executive officers having to do that, the executive director, just like calling all other votes, the executive director will step up and call for the vote at that time, nominations and the vote. The board shall appoint an executive director, and again, tidying up language. In some places it was called the audit committee, some places it was called the finance committee. Some boards have both. Ours has one committee that has the title Finance and Audit Committee, so we're just tidying it up to make it match the name of the committee that already exists. Right there. This is a change to the executive director's role that's outlined in bylaws. It used to say approve all expenditures up to a value of $3,000 where same are not contained in the budget. That was what exists right now. We're proposing a change to say approve individual expenditures up to a value of $5,000, so increasing the individual expenditure limit. But we're injecting something that didn't exist before to a maximum value of $20,000 annually, where same are not contained in the budget. So that's a proposed change. In the event that the executive director shall be absent from the commission or incapacitated from performing the duties of the position, what's in yellow is what exists right now, what's in yellow and strike through. It talks about the director of the solid waste division and or the director of the planning division shall act as executive director. It kind of narrows it to who the board can have as acting executive director in the event that the executive director who's been hired is incapacitated or away. So we thought perhaps since it's the board's executive director and the executive director is the only employee of the board, that the board should have a little more flexibility and leeway in deciding who should be the acting executive director in the event that the hired executive director had to be away unexpectedly or became incapacitated. So we are suggesting changing that very narrow replacement look to say, in the event that he is incapacitated or absent, the board shall appoint a senior staff member or a contract employee to act as executive director during such absence or incapacity. That way, if a senior staff member doesn't want to be conscripted, or if perhaps there are senior staff that maybe are newer or wouldn't have the particular skills or abilities to do what the executive director would do, because it is it's a very significant role to fill. So in that case, the board would have the leeway to hire somebody as a contract employee for the term of the absence. And then we are suggesting adding something so that in the event that there's a planned absence of longer than 14 consecutive calendar days because of vacation time that can be used up all at once or whatever the case may be, if the absence is going to be longer than 14 consecutive calendar days, an acting executive director shall be appointed as above. It's not optional. Somebody will be appointed for an absence longer than 14 days. The executive director shall give the board 30 days notice of such absence. And of course, that's a planned absence as it says. So those are a couple of significant changes that you may want to look at as well, but I do think they make sense. And again, willing to answer any questions if you have any. And again, defining secretary to the board, because that's how it's referred to elsewhere in the existing document, but the title had never been changed to that. Financial officer, with input and recommendation from the executive director, the board of directors shall approve the appointment of a financial officer for the commission. That's our wording that we're suggesting. Prior to this suggestion, it would have read as such: with input and recommendation from the executive director, the board of directors shall appoint the appointment of an individual who shall then be a staff member of the SNBSC. So we have suggested a change that it would allow it to be a staff member or a contract employee in future if needed. Right now, we have a wonderful financial officer, Mark Porter, but someday he will retire. And we just want to make sure that our options are open for the time when we may need to hire a financial officer or arrange for a financial officer. Again, tidying up the language, put in place, instead of such safeguards, just put in place safeguards and procedures to ensure the highest quality of management, just simplifying some language, not making it seem as wordy and clunky. Identify to the board, this is the financial officer's role, identify to the board any emerging financial concerns, short and simple. Pursuant to paragraph 10.3b of the Act, the board has the power to make and approve bylaws. So we are suggesting that strike through of that paragraph. and the next paragraph to have a sentence injected into it. Each committee of the board shall appoint one of its members as a recording secretary at the beginning of each meeting. Alternatively, the committee may request, because this is what we're doing already. The committee may request through the executive director that a staff member be assigned as the recording secretary for the meeting. And our staff is a great help at committee meetings. Standing committees shall consist of a minimum of 4 board members and alternates. And we're suggesting injecting this phrase to a maximum of 8 selected and approved by the board or as otherwise prescribed. The reason the suggestion to 8 is because our quorum for a board meeting is 9. So if you had a committee that had 10 more board members, then really you have a board quorum, and per our bylaws that allow special meetings to be called and all of those things, you could really run into a conflicted situation where a committee is exceeding quorum of the board, and then there could be a whole lot of challenges. And again, not a single concern about the current board, but we have to be wise in how we word our bylaws so that if there were challenges in the future, we have thought about ways to mitigate some of the challenges that could arise by the size of committees. So that's a new change that we're suggesting. So term, except as otherwise provided, again, term of office for standing committers should be for 2 years. We haven't been following that because our committee membership can change mid-term. And so it's been a challenge to keep track of all that. So we're just suggesting a simplification. Standing committee membership shall be ratified at the first board meeting following the election of executive officers. So that way, if there's a change due to municipal elections, and then we have our AGM and all of that, we have our very first board meeting, some standing committee memberships might be gone. So we're going to re-look at those and ratify them at the first board meeting in case of changes, just to keep it simple rather than every 2 years. Any change midterm has to be ratified by the board anyway, so you're already covered there. Plans for standing committees. Each standing committee, instead of shall, develop short and long-term plans, including the fiscal aspects thereof, respecting the services of the commission. It just seemed wordy and not really everyday language. So we're suggesting a change to what will be in green. Each standing committee should, where applicable, develop short and long-term plans, including financial impacts. Committees may also develop policies for consideration by the board. Just a simplification of what the intent of the wording was. Unexpected vacancies on committees. In the event that unexpected vacancies arise on standing committees, the chair of the committee shall notify the board of the vacancy at the next regular board meeting. We're just injecting that. So we're making it, we're putting the onus on the chair of the committee to let the board know when there's been a change in the composition, in case anything needs to be done to bring it back up. Finance and Audit Committee, again, changing some wording because it says some of the former wording or the existing wording says there shall be a, well, we already have one, so we don't need to say there shall be a, there is a. So we just wanted to simplify the language to show that it already exists and say, as approved by the board, this committee has the mandate to ensure that the commission's financial policies and procedures are compliant with current federal and provincial legislation, and to ensure that the commission utilizes best practices in its financial management. Composition, board members who have training and experience in finance are encouraged to serve on this committee. Responsibilities, no changes suggested there except for one addition at the bottom. And this came out of a Finance and Audit Committee. Conduct a targeted financial review twice yearly and as otherwise directed by the board, which includes access to documents and senior staff, including the planning director, solid waste director, corporate analyst, financial officer, and executive director. Okay, and then 3.1.2.4, it was called committee crossover prohibition, and we could never figure out why. So we're just suggesting a change to the title. Instead of that committee crossover prohibition, it's special considerations. It's a consideration that the Finance and Audit Committee has that no other committee of the board has. And again, not changing what's in the wording of it. At the discretion of the committee, outside expertise may be called in. When this committee is carrying out audit duties, neither the executive director nor the financial officer are ex officio members, but they can be invited in. So it already exists. We're just tidying up the title of it. Again, secretary to the board, not of the board. Divisional standing committees, and here's one of the changes where we're separating the general standing committees from the divisional ones. Divisional, and we're defining that for those who may be coming on. Divisional standing committees are the regular standing committees. Our regular standing committees, however, they deal specifically with the separate divisions of the SNBSC. And again, we had to be very careful with our wording to make sure that we're wording it in a way that reflects what the board actually and committees actually do. The Planning Management Committee deals with the planning division of the SNBSC. So we're identifying what the PMC does. That definition was missing before. The terms of reference, and again, tidying up language. Receive regular reports from the local planning division. That's what the PMC should do. That's if there's reports from the local planning division, they go to the PMC. Review and provide input on annual budget proposals in relation to, and we don't have a community planning department. We have a local planning division. And so just tidying it up to reflect what we already call our divisions. And they're recommending to the board of directors through the executive director, the annual budget component relating to, again, the local planning division. So tidying up the language for clarity. Some of these strike throughs are just because striking through half a sentence and injecting part of it, it's just easier to strike the whole thing out and start fresh. So some of this is what we've done in point C. Provide advice and guidance to the board in relation to the high level operational and strategic directions of the local planning division. Be a mechanism for any issues related to PrAC to be brought to the board. That's a new one because we were trying to make sure that when somebody goes, but what does this committee exist for, that we know exactly how they work together. So the composition, the Planning Management Committee shall be composed of at least 50% members of the SNBSC Board of Directors. And again, because it's in green, we're suggesting adding this. Community members with relevant expertise may be invited to serve on the committee by recommendation to and approval of the Board of Directors. The chair of the committee must be one of the serving board members. Because if it's a committee of the board, the chair is the only one. The chair, in order to report to the board, needs to be a member of the board. So that's the rationale for that. I'm not sure why the vacancies one is there. The PMC chair shall be responsible for providing committee reports to the SND Board of Directors at regular scheduled board meetings again. And any issues related to PrAC are made known through that committee as well. And that's a new addition to show how the two work together. Technical Advisory Committee, the duties, again, just identifying that TAC deals with the solid waste division of the SNBSC, provides expertise-based advice, just tidying up the language again, and again, identifying it as the solid waste facility, SNBSC solid waste facility, because we're no longer the Southwest Solid Waste Commission. The committee shall be comprised of at least 7 members, period. Strike that out and then define it later on. Membership will include no less than 4 SNBSC board members and 1 ex officio facility management staff, and may include up to 5 members of the community who have relevant technical and operational expertise. So that was already brought into there. That's why we struck it out up there. The TAC chair, not SNBSC, the TAC chair shall be responsible for providing a committee report. Again, just tidying up language. All right, here's the RCO. This is all in green because we made the motion to create the RCO, but we never actually put it in our bylaws. So again, this is in green because it already exists, but it is new, and you need to know that. As part of that, we're suggesting a change due to wording. The Regional Collaborative Committee instead of Regional Collaborative Oversight Committee, because the board provides oversight, and just to make sure that we're not crossing into making it seem like the committees or board is trying to provide oversight of staff that may be reporting to the board. We wanted to tidy up the wording and take the word oversight out. So we're suggesting as part of this draft a change on the name from Regional Collaborative Oversight Committee to simply the Regional Collaborative Committee. And then formalizing the wording of the motion that was made. The Regional Collaborative Committee deals with the cooperative and regional division of the SNBSC. The RCC provides oversight for regional initiatives. So again, taking out any wording of oversight and staff in the same sentence. Oversight for regional initiatives of the board, such as recreation, as assigned to it by the board of directors. So giving an example of one of the initiatives it may oversee on behalf of the board. Composition, the regional collaborative committee shall consist of board members and alternates selected and approved by the board, just like every committee. Reporting responsibilities, same, the RCC chair shall be responsible for providing the report. Meetings will be held quarterly or as required, subject to a maximum of twice per month, just like every committee.
Twice.
Yeah,
Can you back up?
absolutely.
That, where you say regional collaborative committee, and then in the next line, you got regional collaboration. I know it means the same thing, but it should be named the same, should it not?
Absolutely, that means it. Yes, thank you, Alan. We missed that. Isn't it funny how you can read something 10 times and skip right over? We did pour through this with a fine-tooth comb. I appreciate that. So I think, Hollis, can you edit that in real time?
That's PDF, so.
That's PDF, so you can. Okay, so I'm just going to take my notes. Thank you, Alan, for catching that. That's great. So I'm just going to take my notes. 3.2.3.2. Good eyes. All right. Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, and again, unless anybody else has anything to say, the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. If you do, just stop me. I'm just going through on the autopilot here. And again, this was one of the things I was like, we're sitting here, and Jim and Annette and I have both been on the board for well, me for 5 years, and Jim, I think even longer than that, Annette longer than that even. And we still weren't really clear when you read it, if someone new coming on, because we didn't, would really get the gist of how it ties in with everything. So we're tidying up how it's defined and laid out for new board members. So the committee is established by the authority of the New Brunswick Department of Environment, Local Government. This is dry reading. I know you'll all sleep good tonight. And it identifies that the bylaws are in appendix 1 of the document. We've taken out the parentheses, left the content there. Identifies that it's an arm length committee, and again, just clarifies the yellow strikeout. Its structure fits under the Planning Management Committee. It really doesn't fit under it, such that any issues which arise. So we just wanted to tidy up the language, bring out from the appendixes how the government costs are absorbed. And then due to its unique structure, in that its chair may not be a member of the SNBSC board, any PRAC-related issues which may need to come before the board shall be done so through the PMC. Just clarified how it works with the PMC, made it a little easier to understand, we think. Okay, so this again.
I would have a question on that.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So in my particular case, when would this come into effect?
There would be, this is the notice of motion will be made tonight. So the vote would happen next month if we, to adopt the draft bylaws.
So,
is there some?
Go ahead.
No, I wonder what, feel free to speak if you.
Well, I'm just wondering what my position would be. I am the chair of the PRAC. And when you say SNBSC board, then that means I have to make a decision.
Oh, no.
What
No, I
does that?
don't think that was the intention, Sam. It was the fact that at some point in time, because of the PRAC's own bylaws, the PRAC may have a chair that's not a member of the board. Not that the chair can't be a member of the board, but that it might not be.
It says its chair may not be a member of the SNBSC board.
Oh, I see where you're saying that's not that. Yes. See, this is.
So that means when the LSD elections are up in April, I have to decide whether I want to run for an LSD or for the PRAC again.
No, that was not the intent of that wording suggestion at all. When it was suggested that it may not be, it meant might not be. It like doesn't have to be. The PRAC's own bylaws state that its chair can be whoever. It doesn't have to be a member of the board. So we were trying to clarify how it would work with the PMC in the event that the chair was not a member, not that the chair could not be a member of the board. So we do want to clarify that language. That's not the intent.
Because the way I'm reading it, and not to be argumentative, but the way I read that in green right now is that in April, I have to make a decision to either be run for the LSD or the PrAC.
That's certainly not the intent of the suggested wording change. It was to try to identify and point out that the chair of the PrAC at some point might not be a member of the chair. And how does that committee report to the board in the event that its chair is not a member of the board? That's the wording that was trying to be achieved.
Okay.
Yes, yes, that's what was trying to be achieved. So we can certainly
Heard that.
yes.
So it can be changed?
Yes, we can change it like right now, if we can put it up on the screen, because we have two members of the bylaw committee here, Annette and I, and we can certainly, I know Jim would
Yeah,
agree.
because there are also other members on the board that are on the PrAC that may run for the chair of the PrAC as well, so.
Oh, absolutely, and like I say, I can't stress enough, it wasn't the intent to limit it so that it couldn't be a member of the board. It was to identify what happens when it isn't a member of the board. That was the sole intent. So let's tidy.
Seems to
I bet Jim is watching and offering some suggestions. Let me just see. My phone's, nope, that wasn't him. Shoot. Okay. How can we word that?
Doug has his hand raised.
Yes, okay. I don't see all the hands, so please, Doug, did you have your hand raised?
I had a different question.
Okay.
From that same section.
Sure.
The first two lines are not highlighted, but there is no longer a government department called the Department of the Environment and Local Government. Do we mean by that sentence that the PrAC is established under provincial legislation? And if so, we should just name the piece of legislation that establishes the PrAC. And then it doesn't matter, as we did earlier, it doesn't matter which department currently has responsibility for it.
Just like we tried to do earlier.
Yes, yeah, I would
There still
suggest
is
that anyway.
There still is Department of Environment and Local Government.
But what if they change the name of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
They did. There
It's
is
now
no
called the Department of Environment and Local Government, and
Well, the two departments, there are two different departments now. One is called Environment and Climate Change, and the other one's called Local Governance and Local Government Reform, Governance Reform. So
we missed that, You guys are great at catching things. I really appreciate it. Okay, Authority of the New Brunswick. Can we just say the Government of New Brunswick?
Well, we might as well. I mean, then when they change the name, it all remains the
covered.
same.
Yeah.
Provincial authority.
if necessary, I think it would be better to quote the section of
The legislation?
Which legislation it's established under, if that's how it's established.
Well,
All right.
yeah.
So how about this? I'm going to make this suggestion. We'll bring Jim, he's the chair of the bylaw committee, into this. So when we make the notice of motion, we will have the language clarified. The content isn't like what we wanted to clarify. The content, absolutely, especially what Jim said, Doug said rather. Losing my train of thought here. Sam. Yes, so Sam's, we want to tidy that language up because we certainly weren't, and I cannot stress that enough, trying to preclude a board member from being the chair of the PrAC. We were trying to cover the bases in the event that the PrAC chair isn't at some point in time a member of the board. And so we want to make sure if we can tidy that language up to make it very, very clear that was the intent. We won't be changing the content of it, just the wording to make it clear that we're not excluding anybody.
I understand, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will tidy up chair of PrAC and board. Thank you, gentlemen, for your questions. It's great to have another set of eyes. The hours we've spent in. Yes, somebody else? Somebody speak up? No, okay.
It was a preference.
Okay, sure. I just don't want to miss anybody. And again, and what's in red, we're saying now that we've showed you what we would like to see as the committees, this in red was the old format with them not under the divisions and all of that. So when you see that all in red, that's just saying that we made so many changes to the order of them
We can just skip through all.
that all of those changes you see we've already gone through. We're just saying as part of the rearranging of the order, we've already addressed all of that. And again, you have this all in your board package, not in your board package, but in an email from Hollis going through all that. So feel free to go through it with a fine tooth comb. Absolutely. Conflict of interest. And again, the title in the current bylaw says creation of policy. We're not creating a policy. We're wanting to clarify what conflict of interest means. So we're suggesting changing the title in the current bylaws from creation of policy to financial benefit exclusions. Not changing the content at all. Right here, immediately withdraw from the meeting while the matter is under consideration or vote. And we suggested striking out the word room because we're not necessarily all in a room now when we're in a meeting. So withdraw from the meeting means whether you're on the phone, on video, in a room, you leave if there's a conflict that you are having to self-declare. Designated employees prohibition, and we just said, what is a designated employee? I had that question, and so we looked it up, and we're just suggesting clarifying where somebody can look if they wonder what a designated employee is. Statement of disclosure. Upon appointment to the SNBSC, each member shall, in the form prescribed by the commission and attached as Appendix 3, complete and file with the secretary to the board, not of the commission, a statement of disclosure. It includes identification of interests, activities, involvement, and other not aspects. We thought that was not as clear a word, other ventures related to the member, which could potentially involve a conflict with regards to the operation of the matters of the board. And then we thought it might be wise to tidy up the wording of how it gets updated. And again, just to make things easy and keep everything significant being done at the same time, we thought we should change it to say the statements for each board member should be updated at each AGM. In between meetings, if something can change for a board member, they're required to disclose that between AGMs and update their statement. Instead of all members shall not, it's kind of a clunky wording. We just want to change that to no member shall disclose information to anyone about other individual board members. And down here, we've hyperlinked things together. Participation in meetings by electronic means. We had a whole section in there. We just need to strike it out because we don't deal with that anymore. It's just a given. Board members may participate in meetings of the board or meetings of any committees they may belong to via electronic telecommunications. Short and simple. Electronic attendance shall carry the same expectations for board members as in-person attendance in terms of punctuality, engagement, confidentiality, and decorum. And again, just changing with the times. Whether attending in person or via electronic means, attendance for the purposes of per diem shall require the board member to join the meeting no later than 15 minutes after the scheduled start and be present for at least 2/3 of the meeting's duration. Again, that's a new thing that we're suggesting. Again, just to hold ourselves, I guess, to a high standard as we're participating via all these separate means of technology. Special meetings, how they can be called. And again, you'll see in the table of contents, we're suggesting some title changes. You said the current has one 5.6.1 titled when to call and by whom. And we're identifying when they get called and by whom based on the content of what was there. We're making the titles reflect what the paragraph was saying was happening. So do take some time to look at those, but you'll see again, ensuring maximum participation. We're just saying when it's called by a board majority, you want to make sure there's going to be a quorum at the meeting, special meeting before you call it. You don't want to call a special meeting and then not have quorum. So just tidying up the language. And again, participation by electronic means. Individuals may participate in the meeting via electronic communications, short and simple. We don't need to identify about islands and all of that stuff. Cancellation of meetings. If the chair, after consulting with board members, that stays the same, that's all, but if quorum's not going to be met, they can cancel. But we currently have a postponement due to weather. And we felt that should be struck out of there. If it is determined by the chair and executive director that weather may make driving unsafe for board members to attend a regular or special board meeting in person, that meeting's format shall be changed to electronic attendance only. And again, that's in line with the change we're suggesting above, where all meetings can be held in person or through various means of technology. And now, so we had to make that paragraph reflect it, that we're not really canceling, but we may change the format to electronic means only in the event there's bad weather and we felt it was unsafe to open this office or Hemlock Knoll. Not really any need to cancel for weather. That's just tidying up what was in the yellow being struck out and putting it all in one simple sentence. And then we thought it would be good to put in the AGM section, so that again, a new executive director, a new board member coming on, when you say the AGM is coming up, they can say, oh, what happens at the AGM, and everything is right there. And that way it's less likely that something will get forgotten again. Or you say if you've got a new executive committee and a new executive director one year, something important could get missed. So if we just have it embedded in there, it's just going to be easy to look it up and say, oh yeah, this is what we got to plan for when we're writing the agenda for the meeting. So please do take a good look at those as well. And again, striking out Robert's version of Robert's Rules of Order, because we already did that in the previous one and this was a holdover. We did say earlier, and it's still there, that the board can refer to it as a guiding document, but the board's vote is the final authority. Okay. Failure to meet quorum. No business will be conducted without a quorum. If there's no quorum within 30 minutes, the meeting will stand adjourned. And we had to strike out and shall be held in the conference room at the solid waste office building in Hemlock Knoll, because we have to allow for electronic only or electronic as well. Right here, we're suggesting adding in something. And this is per motion 1763 that was made, I believe, down in St. Andrews when we had a board meeting down there. And we're just making the bylaws reflect that motion. So that's why the motion number is referenced in blue. So if you want to cross-reference that. Rulings on order. And again, this is just clarifying some language that was really clunky. And we read it 10 times and still didn't really think it was a good way for someone new coming on to be able to understand exactly what was happening. So when called upon to decide a point of order, procedure, or practice, the chair shall reiterate or restate the issue without unnecessary comment and then announce his or her decision. A member can respectfully appeal to the board any ruling of the chair regarding order, procedure, practice, and decorum per 6.7.4.
Is that through the parliamentarian?
Nope, this is the chair ruling, and then the parliamentarian section would be called to play if the chair's decisions was objected to. And then the parliamentarian would step in. This is solely related to the chair of the meeting. Can you go back up to that strike through, Paulus? Just straight, next one down. And again, Robert's Rules of Order, the version described in 5.9, because we don't have a version described in 5.9. 5.9 just says we can refer to the current version of Robert's Rules of Order for guidance if we wish. Hyperlinking, what's in blue is hyperlinking to cross-reference sections. Who shall have the floor? Again, tidying up the language because it really seemed clunky, and because we aren't all in a room to raise our hands together. We wanted to allow for all the various means. So when discussion is initiated on any topic or motion, a speaker's list shall be developed. The chair shall indicate who will be keeping the list. Usually it's the chair, but if there was a lot going on, a lot of means available, they could ask somebody else to do that. And then members are added to the list in the order they indicate their desire to speak. So if there's a lot going on and a lot of people raising their hands at once, they'll go by that list. Tidying up the language of what's already there. Limits of debate. And again, just tidying up the language, it seemed really clunky and it was a long run-on sentence. Not changing any of the intent of the content. Anything in blue again is hyperlinked to relevant sections. Right here, open vote with the exception of the election of the board's executive officers. As detailed in 2.5, every question submitted to the board shall be determined by open vote. And we had to take out a show of hands because somebody could be on phone and they just need to be asked. And so it's just, again, clarifying, it's just open vote, and whatever that means for the means of communication you're using, whether it's raising your hand on the screen, whether you're on the phone and it being asked a yes or no, it's going to be an open vote, not a secret ballot. Almost at the end, signing authority. And again, this is just clarifying in the bylaws what's already taking place. The executive member at large, the third member of the executive committee, can sign checks as well, and Jim already does. So it's just clarifying what already happens. Down here, the directors of the commission shall receive remuneration for attendance at board and committee meetings. Because we had forgot to put in the bylaws that there is remuneration for committee meetings when we made that change a few years back. From time to time, the chair of the board of directors of the commission and possibly other board members is deemed appropriate. Again, that's already something we've adopted by bylaws. By motion, we're just embedding it in the bylaws where it should be. And the current rates of remuneration can be found in Appendix 4. Same thing with the mileage, and you'll see the motion reference. Both of these come from motion 17-70.
I think that should actually be Appendix 3 now.
Appendix 3 now, probably. Yeah, because we had to remove an appendix because of the community policing committee being removed. So when you are looking at the committees, you'll see that is a big change because that is in the current bylaws and it has to be removed because of the motion.
That's the end of the bylaws.
And that's the end of the bylaws. So now we're into the appendix, the PRAC bylaws. There's nothing being suggested change, of course, because it's not, bylaw review is not the time or place to do that. We're just moving it up from appendix, I believe it was the second appendix and now it's the first one.
Yeah.
So no changes except to which appendix it is. All right, and right here, statement of disclosure. This is our conflict of interest notification that will be, that is required when a new board member comes on. We're suggesting be updated at every AGM. Appendix 3, remuneration. We did have to make some updates there. Current PND rates have not changed. We did update the per diems based on the motion to have per diems increase with the cost of living allocated for staff members of the SNBSC. So if a cost of living increase is given to staff, cost of living is also applied to the per diems. And that is again per motion. And then we had to again adjust this one. Okay, so we were going to reference the tables in that though, instead of putting the amount in there. The per diems on that page. We were going to say reference table, whatever. So this is if the chair of the meeting, it's only ever happened once for me. I had to go with Frank can have up to Miramichi. So if the chair or committee member, executive committee members, any board member is required to go or should go on behalf of the SNBSC and is approved by the board, as you guys will recall, there was a motion to have me go with Frank. Then they will get paid a per diem for their work that's outside of a regular board meeting. So that was updated per the cost of living adjustment as well.
And training policy hasn't changed.
And training policy hasn't changed. We haven't touched any of that.
That's it.
So that is the extent. And thank you for those of you who caught in 3.4.1, those two significant things. We are going to tidy those up. And
Madam Chair, if you'd like, I can fix these up for like tomorrow morning and send it out to the board along with the notice of motion, if that's what you want to do, or if you have something else, that's fine too.
what do our bylaws say? It's 28 days for notice of motion?
They don't.
They don't? I'm sure they do, because we changed that once. I think it's 21 days.
Used to be 45 and now it's down to, it's less than 4 weeks.
It's 21 days now, isn't it, Dennis?
I think
It
so,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, it is in there. I just can't remember the section. And we spent so many hours on this and I can't recall it. But yes, we will, if we have to, we would have to call a committee of the whole meeting or something, or a special board meeting to make notice of motion. Or with the board's understanding that we're going to clarify that language and send it out tomorrow for that one section to clarify the intent per Sam's and refer to the regulation for the authority of the government department, take out the government of New Brunswick's department that's referenced in that one section. That's the end of the bylaw committee report. Are there any other questions? I am ready to make a motion, and I would be more than happy to say with the caveat that the amended one, tidying up that 3.4.1 be the one used for the notice of motion, and it will go out tomorrow. But if that's not allowed, we certainly understand that, and we can call a special board meeting to make formal notice of motion once that's been clarified.
Madam Chair, I've got 4 corrections I've noted. So
Okay.
3.2.3.2, it says it should be regional collaboration.
Yes,
Yeah.
Alan pointed that out. Yeah.
3.4.1, that wording change of may to might, or whatever that looks like. And then also that change of not being specific about the department.
Yep.
9.2, I think there's a reference to Appendix 4, and it should be Appendix 3.
Okay.
And in Appendix 3, to reference those tables instead of making specific references.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 corrections that I've got.
Okay. Reference the tables. Is everyone clear on what was on the screen versus what we're going to try to send out to you tomorrow?
Yeah.
Happy to allow me to make the motion for notice of motion. I guess I'm just going to make the notice of motion, and it will go out tomorrow. The final version that you will be voting on next week based on the feedback of board members from tonight. So there's your notice of motion has been presented. And I want to thank personally, Jim and Annette. We have spent a lot of hours, and we would spend sometimes half an hour arguing over one word, not arguing, that's the wrong word to use, but debating. And well, could you take it this way? Could you take it that way? And you could see that we still missed a few. Sam pointed out a big one because we certainly didn't want to leave that intent. So thank you all. And thank you, Annette and Jim, for the hours you put into it. It's a big endeavor, and you poured your heart into it. I wish Jim could have been here tonight. Any questions?
I have a question, Madam.
Yeah.
You mentioned a committee can be up to 8 people.
Maximum of 8.
Once they get 4 to 8, you said not over 8 people. Does that, I thought we had a limit on what you could belong to, 2 or 3 committees.
Yeah, and that's still,
Still there?
that's still there.
That 8.
Yeah. The maximum of 8 board members on a committee is what that maximum was. We can go back to that.
Oh, that's what it was, 8.
For the committees that you're sitting on.
It was the number of members on a committee and not the number of members, not the number of committees you could sit on. The number of standing committees a board member can sit on was changed per motion to 3 instead of 2. And that was already done in a bylaw update a couple of years ago.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, and thank you for the question. Is there anything else? No questions? All right, so you have your notice of motion from bylaws. We'll move on to Human Resources Committee report. Wade Greenlaw, LSD Chair, is the chair of that committee. I'll turn it over to you, Wade.
Everybody, yeah, just a quick update. So the HR committee met 2 different times on the 15th and the 22nd, and the effort's been put into the executive director assessment. Still missing a few of them, so if you haven't done yours, you still have time to put in. And the revision of the HR manual, the cleanup and tune up of that, and that'll be ready for the next meeting. That's all I have. If anybody's got any questions, let me know.
Short and sweet. Don't you love his report versus mine? Any
That's awesome,
questions?
Wade.
Wade's the favorite. Yay, he's my favorite too. because of
I
that.
might make it to I might make it to my hockey game yet.
I'll get you out of here, Alan. I'll get you out of here. Okay, any questions for Wade? Wade? Nope, okay, so Human Resources Committee report. Nope, we already did that. Financial report. Winston Gamblin is the chair of that committee, so Winston, take your liberty.
I don't know, Alan, I got 5 pages here, but I cut it down for you. No, yeah,
Everybody's time, so you have to keep it short.
17 to 23, 5 pages there. It covers a comparative balance sheet with the social service commission, and everything. I've looked them all over as close as I can, and everything seems to be on the up and up there. The comparative income statement is good. Some places we have surpluses, and so I think that everything is running really, really well. And you have the solid waste, which is it's up there. It's good. It's not as quite as good as a couple of years ago, but it's coming real good. And everything in that, we have a net income of $431,700. So it really, it's I don't know how it can be run any better and more and get as much stuff done. So, but all your summary income statements and for all the different areas and everything else are all there. And if you do have any questions, I like Wade. I mean, we'll get the financial officer to check it all out. That's my report, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Any questions for Winston? And do read that letter also that was drafted as a tentative letter to send to the Minister of Justice and Public Safety about the building code thing. I do see it at the back of my package now. I do take a minute to read that, and you can reply via email to Hollis to let him know if you have your support in the executive committee. Of course, we'll go over that as well. All right. With that, we have come to the point in time where we set the date and time of our next regular board meeting. The next date and time of next regular board meeting will be April 22nd at 6 p.m. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet because it's going to be followed by our AGM right after.
And that's, excuse me,
yes.
at the Garcon.
And that will be held, the in-person portion for those who choose will be at the Garcon Civic Center, and it will be compliant with whatever regulations are in place at the time. We will make sure of that. And of course, the technology will be available for those who need or choose that route to attend. So April 22nd, 6 p.m., a short board meeting followed by a lunch and for the board members, and then followed by our AGM. And we do have a guest speaker lined up, which I think you're going to be really pleased with. So we'll move to questions and answers with the public. Are there any questions, Hollis, that have come in on YouTube or Facebook or email or?
Oh, Madam Chair, there are not.
None, and we only have one member of the public with us. He's kind of public, I guess. He's our local services manager, Darren. It's been good to have you with us tonight. It's been a while since we've seen your face. It's been a while, so it's just a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do on behalf of the LSDs and work with the commission. And hopefully you can attend our next one as well. So, he said there's no questions. So it was good to see you all tonight. Alan, you've got a hockey game to go to. We're looking for something, Dennis.
I'll I'm playing against the deputy mayor of St. Andrews tonight. I gotta beat him.
Better get going. You better win.
Red
See you
match.
all.
All right, thank you.